She put a pot on she hair and gone. Them a the first one out on the dam. Basket on she head, bucket in each hand, hold up on she frack, I wanna she grandson. To the market, them a go. For the morning, the day is dawning. For Cockacrow to give the villagers a warning. Rise and shine, the birds them a sing. All animal take turn as them join in the waking. Cockacrow, dagabag, donkey, bray, horse, and they even duck a quack. Cockacrow, dagabag, donkey, bray, horse, and they even duck a quack.
Even Dr. Quack. Even Dr. Quack. Just imagine, Mr. President, and good evening to you. Good evening to all of our listeners. Dagabar, Dr. Quack. Dr. Quack. What a Creole is that? Dr. Quack. Good night. How are you doing, sir?
Well, it's good to be back on this program. And now that we're in the Christmas season, I bring greetings to all of your viewers and listeners. As we said in previous programs, nearly 2/3 of the population of Guyana is Christian, and we feel that Abbey program should be appropriate at this time, and of course, programs which bring tidings and greetings to people who are Christian. And I think it's very important that the topic you have chosen this week is about family, the Holy Family. And I feel that it is something that is relevant to the majority of the population, and even non-Christians, would see value in having strong families, even if they don't call it the Holy Family. They'll see the value in having strong families. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you very much for choosing this topic in this Christmas season. Speaking to the whole Guyanese population.
And thank you so much as well. Family is very important, not just this time of the year, but throughout the year. But something is even more special at this time of the year, as folks prepare to celebrate Christmas or Kwanzaa, holiday season, and this time that all the family members come together. And this is why we have such a program dealing with the family. But before we get into that, we understand what family members, what families are going throughout Guyana. And, as you pull your chairs and you call up your friends and you share the link, we want to wish all the family members, those who might be going through some sort of hardship as a result of.
Oh, Jesus Christ, if cost of living double, I don't know what happened. A pound of sugar is $300 already. Flour, everything gone up. Everything just raising. You got to give a fight.
Everything, every single thing raising, and it's affecting the family. Families, it's affecting. So we go now, today's topic, as we hinted at, the public interest. Anansi Web, it's a public interest, of course, but Anansi Web Education. Today we examine the topic of the Holy Family. The Holy Family. The discussion searches for ways to avoid violence and fortify families by addressing the following questions. And we go to the first question, President Granger. Why is the Christian festival of the Holy Family important?
There are several reasons. To start with, the majority of Guyanese claim to be Christians. So if it's important for them, it's important matter to be discussed on this program. Secondly, I do believe that the concept of the Holy Family is, although it's the actual words, those two words are referred to a specific festival in the Christian church, which is celebrated on the first Sunday after Christmas. I think that specific festival is important, and that is why it is celebrated at this time of the year, the first Christmas after the first Sunday after Christmas. And third, I think anyone who examines, the condition of Guyanese society today, although we talk about wealth and cash grants and oil and all that, it's important to understand that if the family is under stress, we need to do something about it, because the family is important, not just as a talking point. It is, it holds society up, and if the family collapses, you know, you can't imagine what will happen to the rest of society. All of us come from families. We have family names, and we raise our own families. We come from families and raise our own families, through marriage and other institutions. And I think for those reasons, it is important. If it's important to the people, it's a matter that should be discussed. And if the family is under stress, we need to find out the sources, the causes of that stress, and try to rectify the problems.
Absolutely well said. If the family is under stress, well, then we have to find out the sources and correct it. Well said. Good night. If you're now joining us, welcome to Anansi Web Education. We're talking about the family, especially at this time of the year. Takes us to our second question, President Granger. What are the challenges to stable family life in Guyana today?
There are numerous challenges. I think abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, verbal abuse, are and other forms of abuse. Threaten stability in the family, and it's easy for males particularly to abuse people who they feel are weaker, and children are weaker, so they get boxed about and sometimes abandoned. Wives tend to be weaker physically, and many wives have been murdered. Up to quite recently, we see a woman at Swan or some other part of the Linden Suzdek Highway being murdered in public view by her husband, stabbed 15 times. So the abuse of wives and of women and children is one of the most important reasons why we need to pay attention to this problem. The other problem, of course, one of the other problems is the question of divorce and separation. Very frequently, of course, many persons who go to a Christian marriage, feel that the church, the marriage should be indissoluble. But I think for practical reasons, it is better for for people who can't live together to live apart. I have a saying which is many people don't accept. Everybody knows of the saying: "Those who God has joined together, let no man put asunder." But I put it the other way: those who man has put asunder, let not anybody try to bring together. Because some people just can't live together. That's a fact of life, and it is no point. People who just fight each other every day should stay together and destroy the lives of their children. So that sometimes divorce is better than by forcing yourself to live together. The other point which needs to be considered is that Guyana is a diverse population, and we have people of different ethnicities, different religions, and it is not a traditional rural society where people could live in a little village and not travel. Even some people never cross a river. They never cross the Bobby's River, the Demerara River, or the Sikkim River. They just stay in the little community. But now people mix. A quarter of the population, at least, is of mixed ethnicity. People travel overseas. They marry foreigners. I've known families where people try to marry into the family, and the father might be very staunch Christian or Muslim or Hindu. He says no, that person who wants to enter this family has to convert. But we now accept that they're interracial marriages, they're interreligious marriages, and sometimes they're international marriages. You marry people from from other countries. And we accept diversity more now in 2024 than in 1924. 100 years ago, certain people would never tolerate a sort of married to somebody of different culture, different ethnicity, and we now become more tolerant to lesbians and gays, and and, I think the laws have changed, and people understanding of sexuality has changed. And of course, because of the fact that these changes have taken place, we now know that there are a lot of more interreligious unions. In the past, people had this ideal that a Christian must only marry a Christian, a Hindu marry his Hindu, or a person of African descent must only marry a person of African descent, and so on. But I think there's now a change, in the way that the family is viewed. Traditionally, mother, father, child would be of the same ethnicity, but that is no longer married. Now we accept diversity. We now accept diversity, and I think that is still a challenge, but it is something we need to deal with. Another challenge is the question of poverty. Poor people tend not to get married in greater numbers. Of course, many people have the same ideal. I think a lot of women would like to marry and to make it legal, but sometimes they just can't afford a wedding ceremony with all the clothing and the reception and the cake and the invitations. And so sometimes they just don't bother. And this happened a lot after emancipation. Many people lived and had very stable marriages or unions without going to church. And we don't need to look on people who are living together unmarried according to the law as being, living unethical or immoral lives. We need to understand that. And we need to think also of safety of families. We don't want children to grow up in an unsafe environment. And we need to look at parental conflict. That, if parents are fighting one another, if fathers are absent from homes, sometimes people are living in what could be described euphemistically as informal settlements, slums, squatter settlements, shanties. These are not good places to bring up a child. And sometimes they're living in a one-room apartment. So a mother and a boyfriend are making love in the same room, and their children are there. They see everything. And unfortunately, sometimes in the hinterland, children go with their mother or the father to some entertainment spot in a mining community or a logging community, and people are showing pornographic films there, in the restaurant, and the children are, seeing everything. So when people grow up in these, poor situations, slums and so on, and there's no separation where children could be given a more normal ethical education, if you want to call it that, we can see problems arising. And then, of course, Guyana came out of the COVID situation. The whole world is coming out of the COVID situation. But many women lost their jobs. And they weren't able to provide for their family. They weren't able to care for their children because they became unemployed. And sometimes children who didn't complete their education were forced to go out and work, sometimes informally, sometimes, at jobs, which they might consider menial. Maybe if they'd stayed in school, they could have gotten, qualified, and they could have gotten better jobs. And so these are some of the problems which people face now in Guyana. And these problems affect the family. The family become unstable. The father goes away, or sometimes the mother goes away and leaves the children. I think this happened in the Troubles. Sometimes you see some very young boys. I think they had some names for them. And when you read about the way they grew up, not only were their fathers absent, the mothers were absent as well. So it is really a tragedy. That period of violence was really a tragedy that affected Guyana for a long time. And the people who sponsored or promoted violence, must realize that the damage they did to society, the harm they did in society by introducing that violent period we call the Troubles. So I would say that adherence to the Christian notion, ideal of the Holy Family is important. It looks ideal. The mother, Mary, the child, Jesus, and the father, Joseph. But even though it is not fiction, the Christians believe it to be true. But what I'm saying is that a group like this could hold together during the storm. They could hold out and stay together, and together they would be able to build a strong family. So even though it's an ideal we should all aspire to. We should all aspire to. I'm not saying that people who do not grow up in the ideal family are likely to have to face any disadvantages. But we should continue to aim at the ideal and try to ensure that you know the child particularly is looked after and women are protected from violence.
Well said. Thank you so much, President Granger. We'll take a quick, maybe just a 10 seconds break as we address tonight's topic, the Holy Family, and keeping families together, even in times of trials and tribulations and so forth. And we know exactly how some families are feeling throughout the country, or even not just in the country, outside of Guyana.
If I could just mention before you cut off, the picture you're showing there, it's an Ethiopian Orthodox picture. As you can see, it's very, I think people associate this type of art. But the idea is that even in hard times, when Mary and Joseph were forced to flee, they fled to Egypt with their child and they came back as a family. So even during difficult times, they held the family together.
Absolutely. We'll be right back.
Oh, Jesus Christ, if cost of living double, I don't know what happened. A pound of sugar is $300 already. Flour, everything gone up. Everything just raising. You gotta get about $40,000 for buy good ration. You gotta get 3 man.
40,000, ration gone up, everything price gone way up. It takes us to our third question, President Granger. When do families face the greatest risk to their stability?
My view is that the greatest risk arose or became evident during the Troubles 24 years ago. And the family was really under stress. We knew that there was a lot of migration taking place. We knew that there was violence within the family. We knew that there was an abandonment of some of the values that Christians stood up for. We knew that there was poverty, and we knew that life was unsafe for many persons. I know families with living overseas sent for their parents to say, come and live, come away from that dangerous place. So in times of political disorder and instability, in times of COVID, when many families, when many parents lost their jobs, and people were living a hand-to-mouth existence, in times of political oppression, when we see actions taken against poor villages, and when we see sometimes benefits unevenly spread, and people not being given the opportunities to develop their communities. And these are some of the issues which the coalition administration tried to resolve by ensuring that we developed communities in the hinterland and rural areas too, by ensuring there were courts, ensuring that there were tongues, city tongue councils, basic Bartikam, Abroma, Madhya, and Letem, and of course you have now a lot of stress caused by not only migration of families, breakup of families, people leaving Guyana to seek, a better quality of life overseas. But we have a lot of migrants coming into the country, and this has been a very disruptive factor because, when we read about stories of trafficking in persons and prostitution, when we read about destitution, we see that more stress, not less, more stress is being introduced in society. So I believe families continue to face risk to their stability by what is taking place in Ghana today. Not that there has been an abandonment by Christians of the ideal concept of what the Holy Family stands for, but because there's been a failure on the part of government to protect society and protect these values that society abides by. Poverty is not a joke. It's not a matter of luck. It's not a matter of handouts and cash grants. People need to have strong foundations, and those strong foundations are built on education. And there has been some improvement in the available access of education or access of children to education. But there's been an attitude to employment, giving people, what they call the three Bs, buckets, brooms, and basins to clean up the highway is not really what we're looking for in terms of employment of heads of families. We need to have a different foundation. And it's a pity that this administration, the PPP administration, has a bad record. They dismantled the National Service in the year 2000, 24 years ago. And when, in 2018, we set up a National Service again in the form of a sort of youth corps. They destroyed it, So people whose lives depended on that safety net when they dropped out of the formal education system and were able to get back into the field of conventional employment, they lost twice in 2000 and 20 years later in 2020. So the Ghana National Service, which was set up there to train young people, was dismantled in 2000. I think under the PPP administration, and in 2020, 20 years later, when the APNU administration set up the Guyana Youth Corps again, it was dismantled again. So these attitudes and actions by the PPP administration threaten family stability. And the reason why we're having so many family problems is because of the removal of that safety net for employment and the way that education is being treated. For example, the APNU administration established the Bertram Collins College for the public service. So you have public service who haven't been trained now, and you have a lot of problems in some regions because we have people running the regions who have not got a formal education in government. And this is what the Bertram Collins College of the Public Service is intended to do. So some of the policies for government cannot be, or that this government is pursuing, cannot be erased by cash grants and hampers and black barrels. They're just following incorrect policies. So we need to understand what the family, or what family stability depends on it. And, obviously the government, this administration, is on the longest political election campaign we've ever seen in Ghana. It's all a campaign. They're not building, some policies for long-term development. They're running a campaign. And, they're just doing things which, are eye-catching. But in essence, the elements of good government have been eroded, and with the erosion of those elements, I feel that we need to return to the values that were celebrated by some of the Christian churches, and in this regard, the SDA and the Catholic Church, the Anglican churches. These churches pay a lot of attention to the family, the Holy Family, and whether or not you are a church-going person, we need to understand what the Christians propagate as the Holy Family, that image of mother, father, and child. And returning to those values, we'd see that some of the policies introduced by the AP and the administration were meant to stabilize society. Yes, they didn't try to bring in money right away. They were not bankable, but in the long term, they stabilize society and give people an ethical core which can help them to have happy families, happy communities, happy country.
Thank you so much, President Granger. As we go to our final question for tonight, and let me just say good night to all of you who are watching, wherever you are, whether on the quarantine, Linden, Ituni, Kokwani, Lethem, Bartica, all those places. I bet President Granger knows a lot of other places. Oriala. I know, President Granger, you're familiar with Philippi, Flatbush Boulder, Alnis, Manchester, Weldad, Belladrum, all those beautiful villages. Hope Tongue. Someone from Hope Tongue corrected me. Samart, not Hope Tongue. You not said this thing right. It's Hope Tongue. Hope Tongue. And speaking of families, I have learned over the years, President Granger, certain villages you don't go and mess with somebody because all of them are one family, right? Hope Tongue, Belladrum, you name it. Those villages, you go there and you make peace. You don't trouble one house. You see the entire village coming out for you.
I had that experience myself, in politics. When you go to some communities, you discover that many of the residents there are related, and some of the families are connected with some villages. So even though a person may leave and be living in another part of the country, say, "Oh, your uncle, oh, he's still there, Talnes,
Yeah,
he's still in Manchester." But they all go back there, for Christmas, and sometimes even if they live overseas, they come back and they have these village reunions and so on. So you're quite right. The family is important. And because of the way Guyanese society developed, many families are connected with specific geographical areas too. You're quite right.
Go to Linden. Some of them get their roots on the quarantine, West Coast Borbies. Some of them even walk from in the late 1960s. A particular individual I know who became popular in Guyana walked from Iconi, reached to Linden. And the people of Linden rescue, he walked from Iconi with his family and Ijaji Bondo. So villages also rescue families.
Yes.
Some people may know that individual who became popular walked from Iconi, but that's okay. Let's move on. Finally, President Granger, how relevant is the Christian concept of the Holy Family to non-Christians? And this is a very important question as we close off tonight's program. How relevant is the Christian concept of the Holy Family to non-Christians?
It's relevant. It's not meant to be disparaging. This is not a propaganda program, and it's not a program for Christians alone. The point is that in Guyana, the majority of the population is Christian, and they embrace the idea of the Holy Family. Jesus, Mary, Joseph. And of course, the other members of the family who are not mentioned, but the Gospel of St. Mark mentions this other family by name. So I think those Christians who abide by the version known as the King James Version will know the names of the brothers and sisters of Jesus. But nevertheless, the family is what's important. It is, as I said, not a propaganda program, but Christians hold to that ideal. And I do believe that those Christians which adhere to or embrace that ideal have stable families. And we shouldn't feel that there's been a complete abandonment of those values. And it means that those Christian bodies have mechanisms for resolving conflicts within the families. It it is impossible to have a family which doesn't have any conflict. But some of the conflict could be resolved, could be solved. Some are fundamental, and it might be best for people to separate. But there's much that is to be celebrated by a family staying together, and we need to avoid some of the difficulties. For example, we need to ensure that there is proper and full employment for mother and father, so that there's less likelihood that they would fall into poverty. We need to ensure that during times of distress, like extreme flooding, and of course we've had big floods in 2005 and 2021, in which the churches have helped to provide relief. We need to ensure that maybe the question of teenage pregnancy is addressed. That is to say that young girls should be counseled, to postpone, their first pregnancy until they're in a better economic situation or until they marry, because there's this tendency of children getting children, teenage pregnancies, to end up being unmarried, and maybe they can get a second child and they still do not marry. It leads to economic instability. So all in all, we need to look at the measures. We need to see what happens when a mother is employed, the father is absent. Should the state set up maybe night care centers for mothers who work at night, or day care centers? And should it be a state responsibility? It is okay to have a court when there's a dispute, but it's better to have a counseling session so that conflict doesn't end up in murder or conflict. And the mother and father could listen to somebody with experience, not always a judge or a magistrate or a policeman, but somebody who can bring them together again and solve the problem. Some of the problems may be soluble in the sense that they can find out what it is. The issue is it a question of poverty? Is it a question of employment or occupation? Is it an employment problem of the fact that there are differences between mother and father to start with? We are a multi-ethnic country. We are a multi-religious country, and we do have persons who come from different religious groups. It doesn't mean that those persons are in conflict. They're just different. Whether a Hindu marries a Muslim, I'm not going to get involved with right or wrong, or whether they should marry or not, but it's a matter for them to decide. But I do not see that differences in ethnicity or culture or religion should be the basis for breaking up families. It just means that father may go to his masjid, mother may go to the mandir, and the children could go to church. So what? I mean, it's one God, and they serve God in different ways, but these are not reasons for murder or violence. So we're looking at a new dimension of state, not involvement, we're looking at new dimensions of maybe creating a sort of safety net to give the assurance to parents and children that their concerns will be addressed. And we must list those problems. I've done so earlier in the program. We've listed some of those issues, some of the challenges, and let the state try to address them, because some of them cannot be solved within the community or within the family, within the region, within the neighborhood. Some of them require state involvement. For example, if there's a large number of women who are working in the security services, they need to have some night care service, so they could take their children there, because they may be single parent households, take the children to the center, go to work, and in the morning pick up their children, knowing that the children will be looked after overnight. Well, in fact, it is much better to have that type of service than to just give the child, the parent, a sort of hamper and a black water tank, a black bag and a water tank. We need to look at the issue of the family with a fresh pair of eyes to make sure that all of these issues are at the level of the state, not just the courts, not just the police, but as a service to which all mothers could seek assurance and seek refuge so that the children grow up within the family without becoming wild and getting involved in gangs, but grow up within the family knowing that they're going to be looked after, knowing that the mother and father, whether or not they're married, the mother and father will look after them. So I think that every Guyanese mother and father, under this new economic regime that we have entered, in this December, 2019, when I announced we are a petroleum state. I think in this new regime, we have to think differently. It's not just about making money; it's also about having a good quality of life. And I believe that to have that good quality of life, we need to have good families, and more could be done by having a sort of national agency for social protection to look at all aspects of family life and to make sure the families remain stable. If Christians feel that this is the ideal of the Holy Family, well, so be it. The Muslims and Hindus could call it what they feel, but the idea is that mothers and fathers must be together with their children to make sure that Guyana becomes a country where everybody enjoys a good life.
Well said, President Granger. And we're talking about the family and the strength of families, keeping families together, the good governance, good policies in place. In a country as rich as ours, people shouldn't have to be talking about cost of living, and because these are things that divide up the families, and we got to be very careful. And that's why this woman, this vendor, sends a very strong message.
Oh, Jesus Christ. If cost of living double, I don't know what happened. A pound of sugar is $300 already. Flour, everything gone up. Everything just raising.
Everything gone up. Every single thing gone up. The frustration is there. We want families to take this moment and enjoy not just the holiday seasons, but as they prepare to usher in the new year, to even enjoy the new year as well as a family. Do not allow bad policies to affect or destroy the family. Do not allow that. Thank you so much, President Granger, for your time. I noticed you like this ad. There's something about it that you like.
Oh,
I,
Jesus Christ. If cost of living double, I don't know what happened.
it's a
Yeah.
woman's sincerity. It is true, there is a problem of poverty and there is a problem of cost of living. I don't know the person. Maybe she's a single mother. She obviously works for a living. And my sympathy goes out to her, and I pay attention to her. And it is when people speak in this way, I listen to their voices, and this is not fake. she's deadly serious. The cost of living is a problem, and no matter how much you talk about oil and gas or you talk about international relations, she has to face a daily issue of looking after herself and her family. And I listen to her voice, I listen to the tone, I make note of her sincerity, and I feel that her family, I don't know what her family is, I think her family deserves better in this petroleum state. And any family like her, any poor family, should not have to complain loudly about cost of living. We should be able to have a good life. Everyone is entitled to a good life.
Well said. Everyone deserves that good life. She is real. I spoke with her. She's at the Stabrook Market area. And for all of you who are in Guyana, or even if you're not in Guyana, go out there and support these vendors. Go at Stabrook Market, go at Border Market, Port Morant Market, Mackenzie Market, Wisma Market, wherever there is a market, Skeldon, wherever, Blackbush Polder, even the market in Buxton Line Top. I was told that they're having some market day or something like that. Go out and support. Even over in Monrepo Market, when you go there, say hello to my good friend, Polari Lady. Thank you so much, President Granger, and give my regards to your beautiful wife, First Lady Sandra Marie Granger. Thank you so much, sir. Appreciate it. See you next week.
Thank you, and good night to you and your viewers.
Thank you, sir, and good night to all of our viewers, wherever you are. God bless you all. See you next week. Same place, same time.
Come and hear this sweet story that tell the people about life in the country. All day I back down, me now I come home. In a that jackass yard to fetch the load. Cockle shy hand, bag over shoulder, running by his side, a Rexy and Rover. From the farm, them a come.